Greetings, everyone. This is Jim Clingman, your host for the show Blackonomics, back with you again to bring you some more information, and we hope that you can use this information, of course. And we, as always, would like to thank Conscious Multimedia Productions for allowing us to be here and for bringing this show to you. For those of you who may be watching from the South, let me say, hey. And those of you, I used to live down there too, and we used to say that's a real nice way to greet people. For some of the rest of you, I'll just say, what's up, y'all? It's a good opportunity to be able to, from time to time, talk about economic empowerment here on this medium. And I really appreciate the opportunity, and I take it as an honor to be able to do that. And I do it with humility, because I'm not sitting here saying or suggesting in any way that I have all the answers. I look for collaboration, I look for input from you to build upon the ideas and to implement and execute the initiatives that I talk about here on Economic Empowerment, Blackonomics, and I appreciate the input that I get. Today I want to talk about a few different things, but the main topic will be another question: are your dollars making sense? Are your dollars making sense? I think it's something that each of us should assess from time to time. We should ask ourselves in a very personal way, what am I doing with my dollars? Are my dollars making sense in terms of economic empowerment, not only for myself and my family, but for the collective of African Americans, with the understanding that African Americans are at the bottom of the economic ladder here in this country, in spite of the fact that we've been here ever since the country started, in spite of the fact that our forefathers and mothers helped to build this country and create the tremendous wealth that many enjoy in this country today. Are your dollars making sense? Ask yourself that question as we go through this show. I'm going to share several pieces of information with you from different books that I have. I'll read a few quotes from some articles that I have just to make the case and leave you with that lingering question. I hope it will linger. Are my dollars making sense? And that's on a personal level. It's real important that we know where our dollars are going. It's important that we know whom our dollars are benefiting, and it's important that we maximize the leverage that we have with our dollars. And I could throw out some statistics from the last census to suggest to you that we do not leverage our dollars. A lot of dollars go through our hands every year, but there's no leverage when it comes to those dollars. What do I mean by leverage? We don't maximize the reciprocity that is due us, that should be coming to us. We don't get it because we don't use our dollars correctly. Our dollars are not making any sense, and that's what Bishop Luke Edwards down in Alabama told me a few years ago when I was down visiting with him. He said, Jim, our dollars just don't make sense. And what he was saying is that we just don't do the right things with our dollars. So we're going to talk about that today and try to give you some background and some foundational information, so that as you go about your week and as you go about your month and your year, you may take a different look at how you are spending your dollars and be honest with yourself as to answering the question, are my dollars really making sense? In addition to that, I want to talk about a little bit about the issue about the Kroger store closing in Roselawn. Have some information on that I want to share with you, and some information about this whole episode that we're now going through with the city's SBE program as it pertains to pass-through companies. We'll talk about that as well. I'm going to start out by just kind of pulling some quotes together for you from some books that I have, and you can get those books as well, or call me, of course. My number is always on the screen, and I can give you some referral sources for the information that I talk about in terms of our dollars making sense. There's a book out by Brooke Stevens. She and I met a few years ago. We spoke in Buffalo, New York. And the name of the book is Talking Dollars and Making Sense. And I'll start out with a quote from Andrew Young, because we get into discussions sometimes about politics versus economics and what's more important and what controls the other and everything. Of course, you know my stand on that. If I have to choose between the two, I want economic empowerment over political empowerment. But let me just read something from Brooke Stevens' book to kind of set this thing up for you. And this is a quote from Andrew Young in 1985. He said, "Politics don't control the world, money does. And we ought not to be upset about that. We ought to begin to understand how money works and why money works. If you want to bring about feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, healing the sick, it's going to be done in the free market system. You need capital." End of quote. That suggests to me very strongly, and it really builds upon what Booker T. Washington said, what T. Thomas Fortune said, what Marcus Garvey said about economic empowerment and the reality of the world in which we live. I didn't create this, these rules in this country, and I didn't make up this system, nor did you. But if you're living here, sooner or later, it's going to have an impact on you. You're going to have to play in it some way, one way or another. And I think what this quote suggests, this quote by Andrew Young, is that we need to get real and we need to understand what kind of situation we're in. I always quote Jesse Jackson. He said, capitalism without capital is just ism. And that's similar to what Andrew Young is saying, that if we want to achieve all of the things that we say we want and need to do, at some point it's going to take some money. So are your dollars making sense when it comes to achieving the many things that many of us say we want to do? A prime example is the first question that I always ask my business planning class at Smart Money Community Services. So why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Why do you want to go into business? Inevitably, I get 10 answers that call for, well, I want to be my own boss. I want to provide some good things for the community. I want to do good things for the community. I want to pass on something to my children. Just a lot of reasons, and those are good reasons, positive reasons. And then maybe, and sometimes not, I'll get an answer from someone who simply says, I want to make some money. I want to make a profit. And I say, I move that one up to the top of the list, because without that first desire for your business to make some money, you can't do all of the other things that you say you want to do. You don't have anything to pass on. You don't have any resources to help community organizations and charities and people who are in need. So it's real important that we assess ourselves when it comes to our dollars and ask ourselves, are our dollars making sense? Both on an individual level and on a collective level, as I always talk about. There's another book out by a sister that she was here in Cincinnati a few years ago. Her name is Gerald Sanders. She has a book out titled, If You've Got My Dollar, I Don't. If you've got my dollar, I don't. And she has a quote in her book that says, African Americans cannot progress without a leader to forward the cause. And this speaks to a program that I did a few weeks ago on leadership, and it also speaks to how we're going to get to where we need to be collectively. Change does not require a leader, but it does require a critical mass. We need enough people who together form a loud enough voice to bring about change. When it comes to affecting change in a school district, for example, critical mass may consist of 30 parents. With respect to unfair contracting practices by a governmental entity, a critical mass may require at least 200 activists. Critical mass varies depending upon what you're trying to accomplish and the entity you are confronting. That's a real important consideration, especially when it comes to economic empowerment. But let's back up. She wrote this book, I think, around 2000 or so, 2001. And here she's using two examples, school district and governmental entities. And if we want to achieve adequate economic empowerment and political empowerment, we're going to have to do it by critical mass in numbers. We look around sometimes, and especially when we're down at City Hall and the issue is about finance or the budget, and we see very few African Americans in the audience. We see a lot of white people in the audience. But when we're down at City Hall talking about, I don't know, some crime issue or somebody being put out of their homes or something like that, it's packed with African Americans and very few white individuals. We have to, of course, work on all of these issues. We have to be able to multitask, as they say. But we have to also keep our priorities straight. We have to understand what controls the entire system that we're complaining against. The governmental entities, it's about the money. And with the school district, we see a lot of people now talking about it, engaging the school system as to their contracting and workforce inclusion policies. And we've had pretty good crowds to show up at the school board meetings. But what Ms. Sanders is talking about is not only critical mass, not only having people show up, but to do it on a consistent, sustainable basis. If you remember the last show I did with Pastor Damon Lynch and KZ Smith, we talked about that. It takes sustainability. You can't just hit and miss. You can't just say, well, I went twice and that's enough. I'm tired now. You have to keep on pressing, and more people have to come in. And once you reach that critical mass, it's going to take on a life of its own. Critical mass is for those of you who may not be familiar with it, I can use an example to show you what it's like. It's like a snowball. You make a snowball and you put it on this steep hill and it rolls down. It won't move at first. You have to push it. You push it, you push it, you push it, and it picks up more snow. And once it hits critical mass, it'll roll by itself. That's what we need. We need movements that are directed toward economic empowerment that will move on their own without having to start and stop and start and stop and call people again or remind people and all that. It needs to be a regular part of what we do. So back to the question, are your dollars making sense? In most cases, they're not. You know that as well as I do. But how do we move in a collective way through an individual level of consciousness that takes us to the point to where our dollars do start making more sense? And while, as Ms. Sanders says, it's not strictly about leadership. Leadership is important, but it's not strictly about leadership. It's also about, I guess I can invent a word, fellowship. Fellowship. Are you doing your part? Are your dollars making any sense? Another book that I have, I was looking through while preparing for this show. It's titled The Negro in Business, and it was written by Booker T. Washington. Yeah, way back. He died in 1915, so this is a pretty old book. Copyright 1907, original copyright, The Negro in Business. And this book speaks to a lot of positive issues when it comes to